another deep dive with us.
Yes, always a pleasure.
So today, we're going to be looking at something that I think a lot of people struggle with, that feeling of inferiority.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of Alfred Adler. Right. And the source material that we're using is excerpts from a book. Okay. And this book is a dialogue between a philosopher and a youth.
Interesting.
And the youth is really struggling with these feelings of inferiority. And so what if I told you that feelings of inferiority are not about objective facts, but more about how we subjectively interpret things and the comparisons we make?
Well, you know what's so fascinating about this is that Adler actually believed that this feeling of inferiority is a universal human experience. And it's actually from a German word.
Oh.
Minderwertigkeitsgefühl.
Minderwertigkeitsgefühl.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this Minderwertigkeitsgefühl.
Oh.
How does it differ from just like having an inferiority complex?
So Minderwertigkeitsgefühl is actually a little bit deeper than just a simple complex.
Okay.
It's about the subjective value judgments that we place on ourselves. It's less about a specific event and more about an ongoing feeling that we carry with us.
Right. And in the book, the youth share some really relatable examples of his struggles with these feelings. You know, he talks about comparing himself to successful people his age and feeling inadequate,
right,
or like feeling envious of a friend's happiness.
Yeah.
I mean, don't these situations kind of highlight how often our feelings of inferiority are tied to our relationships with others?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are social creatures, and our sense of self is often shaped by our interactions with others and, you know, the comparisons we make.
Right. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
For sure.
Especially, I think, with like social media and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like it just amplifies everything.
Totally.
But here's where I think Adler's perspective gets really interesting.
Okay.
He didn't see these feelings as inherently negative.
Right.
He actually saw them as a natural part of the human experience and something that can actually drive us towards growth.
Yes.
That's kind of a radical idea, isn't it?
It is.
To see something we typically view as negative as like a potential catalyst for growth. How does that work?
Well, they actually illustrate this with a story in the book.
Okay.
Where the philosopher actually talks about feeling inferior because of his height.
Okay.
He is 61 inches tall.
Okay.
And so he initially felt like this was a disadvantage.
Right.
You know, something that was holding him back in life. But then he kind of had this epiphany.
Okay.
He realized that his height hadn't actually changed.
Right.
But his interpretation of it had. So he transformed what he perceived as a weakness into a strength in his relationships.
So he didn't grow taller, he just changed his perspective on what his height meant to him.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So does that mean like we can just choose to not feel inferior anymore?
Well, it's not necessarily about like denying or suppressing these feelings. Because remember, Adler believed that feeling inferior is universal.
Right.
It's part of what pushes us to strive and improve.
Okay.
So think of it like this. You see someone, you know, achieving great things.
Yeah.
And you feel a pang of that, you know, Minderwertigkeitsgefühl.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Okay, so instead of letting that feeling cripple, Adler would say you can use it as fuel.
Okay.
You could ask yourself, what can I learn from this person? How can I use this feeling to actually motivate myself to grow?
So it's not about erasing the feeling, it's about changing our relationship to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how powerful this shift in perspective could be, but how do we actually put this into practice?
Well, Adlerian psychology offers some really great tools and techniques.
Okay.
And one key aspect is understanding life tasks.
Life tasks?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
What are those?
So think of life tasks as the challenges we all face.
Okay.
Like things like work, relationships, finding our place in the world.
Okay.
Adler believed that these life tasks are universal.
So how did these life tasks connect to feelings of inferiority?
So when we feel unequipped to handle a life task, it can trigger or intensify feelings of inferiority. So you might feel inadequate in your job.
Right.
Struggle to connect with others.
Yeah.
Feel a lack of purpose.
You're describing the human experience perfectly.
Right.
But Adler believed that we can overcome these feelings.
Yes. He believed that we have an innate capacity to grow, learn, and adapt.
Okay.
It's about recognizing our potential and building our abilities to tackle these challenges.
So it's about developing competence and self-efficacy in those areas where we feel lacking.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging that we're not fixed, static beings.
Right.
We have the power to learn, grow and develop the skills we need to face those life tasks head on.
That's empowering.
Yeah.
But I imagine for some people facing those life tasks can feel really overwhelming. What would Adler say to someone who's feeling stuck?
Well, he would likely emphasize personal responsibility
Okay.
and encourage them to focus on what they can control.
Okay.
It's not about denying the difficulty of the situation,
Right.
but focusing on how we choose to respond.
Mm-hmm.
We can choose to interpret those feelings as a call to action.
So instead of feeling defeated, we can use those feelings as a springboard to identify areas for growth.
Exactly.
And take proactive steps.
Exactly. Those feelings of inferiority, that Minderwertigkeitsgefühl, can actually become a source of motivation, pushing you towards personal fulfillment.
So it's really a reframing of how we typically view what's often considered a negative emotion.
Yeah.
It's like flipping the script.
Exactly.
Earlier, we talked about how feelings of inferiority are often tied to comparisons we make.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. So Adler believed that those comparisons are often at the root of our problems, especially feelings of inferiority.
Okay.
We judge ourselves against societal standards, our peers' accomplishments, even the perceived happiness of those around us.
So like we're constantly measuring ourselves against this invisible yardstick.
Yes.
No wonder we feel inadequate sometimes.
Right.
How can we break free from that trap of constant comparison?
That's where the concept of social interest comes in.
Okay.
Remember that core Adlerian idea, all problems stem from interpersonal relationships.
Yes. That's been kind of a recurring theme throughout our deep dive.
Right. And Adler believed that true belonging and self-worth come from contributing to something larger than ourselves.
Okay.
It's about feeling a sense of connection and purpose within our community and the wider world.
So it's not about isolating ourselves to avoid comparisons, but about shifting our focus outward towards meaningful engagement.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our value isn't determined by how we stack up against others,
Right.
but by the unique contributions we bring to the table.
Okay.
Think about it when you feel like you're making a meaningful contribution. Those feelings of inferiority tend to lessen their grip. You're tapping into a source of validation that comes from within and from your sense of purpose.
So it sounds like Adler is saying we need to find that place where what we're good at and what we enjoy doing meets what the world needs.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Like, that quote, comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
When we compare ourselves to others, we miss out on appreciating our own unique strengths.
Exactly. And it all ties back to that idea of social interest.
Okay.
That drive we all have to connect and cooperate and contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
So finding that thing we can contribute is key to overcoming those feelings of inferiority.
Yeah, I think so. And when you're focused on making a meaningful contribution, those feelings of, Minderwertigkeitsgefühl,
Right.
they tend to fade away. It's like you're tapping into this deeper sense of validation that comes from within.
Yeah.
And from a sense of purpose.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
So to recap, Adler believed that feelings of inferiority are not necessarily truths, but interpretations.
Right.
And by understanding those feelings and shifting our focus from comparison to contribution, we can use them as fuel for growth.
Exactly. And remember, this is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
There will be times when those feelings of inadequacy creep back in.
Of course.
But the key is to develop those tools and that self-awareness so that we can navigate those moments in a more constructive way.
It's like we're building a muscle, the muscle of self-acceptance and self-compassion.
Yeah.
And the more we exercise it, the stronger it becomes.
For sure.
We can face life's challenges with more confidence and resilience.
Exactly. And, we've covered a lot today.
We have.
But this is really just a small taste of Adler's work.
Right.
There's so much more to explore.
So for our listeners today, what if you started viewing those feels of inferiority as opportunities for growth? How might that change your approach to challenges?
That's a great question to consider.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Until next time.
See you later.